A single strand of human DNA is 2.5 nanometers wide. A solitary silicon atom measures exactly 0.2 nanometers across. Today, the global semiconductor industry is attempting to manufacture intricate computing structures operating at a scale of exactly 1 nanometer. At this microscopic scale, transistors hit the absolute wall of physics. Electrons refuse to stay contained, phasing through solid barriers in a process called quantum tunneling. A single atom out of place triggers catastrophic heat, ruining the device. Overcoming this requires capital expenditures unseen in human history. South Korea built its modern economic identity on a very specific type of silicon. Tech conglomerates leveraged state-backed infrastructure to absolutely dominate the global memory chip market. But expanding into the far more complex foundry business proved vastly more difficult. Foundries do not design chips. They manufacture advanced logic processors designed by external clients. And in this space, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, universally known as TSMC, established a crushing monopoly. The numbers dictate the balance of power. In 2025, the Taiwanese giant commanded nearly 70% of the global foundry market, posting $121 billion in sales. Compare that to Samsung Electronics. Despite being South Korea's flagship enterprise and the world's second-largest foundry, Samsung held just 7.2% of the market with $12.9 billion in revenue. TSMC wasn't just beating them, they were outselling them 10-1. The gap widened year after year. In chip-making, yield is the single most important metric. Samsung's first-generation 3-nanometer yields hovered around 20%. Because 80 out of every 100 chips went straight into the garbage, top-tier clients like Qualcomm, Apple, and Nvidia fled the uncertainty, moving their premium silicon entirely to TSMC. Facing an exodus, Samsung delayed its 1.4 nanometer node to 2029 to fix the immediate crisis. The pivot succeeded. Early in 2026, Samsung achieved a defining technological breakthrough, pushing the manufacturing yield for its new performance-optimized 2-nanometer process past the 70% gold standard. This threshold guarantees high-volume commercial viability. Compared to the first-generation process, the new node delivered a 12% boost in computing performance, a 25% reduction in power consumption, and an 8% reduction in total die area. Mastering the complex multi-bridge channel FET structure allowed Samsung engineers to finely control electrical currents across miniature nanosheets. This yield breakthrough fractured TSMC's monopoly overnight. TSMC's 2-nanometer capacity was booked out completely through 2028 by advance orders. Fabless design companies, desperate for manufacturing capacity, suddenly possessed a viable, high-yield alternative. Tesla capitalized on the opening immediately. The American automaker signed a massive foundry agreement. They contracted Samsung to build their next-generation artificial intelligence processor, the AI6, on the new 2-nanometer lines. Seeking to aggressively expand its autonomous driving and humanoid robotics capabilities, Tesla contracted Samsung to produce 40,000 wafers per month. The expanded contract pushed the total financial commitment to nearly $50 billion. Volume production for the AI6 chips relies on a massive new manufacturing hub located half a world away from Seoul. To bring advanced node production directly to North American soil, Samsung constructed a state-of-the-art facility in Taylor, Texas, commencing trial production ahead of schedule. Securing the present allowed Samsung to look toward the future. Regaining the technological high ground demands pushing beyond the 2-nanometer generation. It requires confronting the 1-nanometer physical barrier head-on. The 1-nanometer roadmap requires abandoning existing transistor designs entirely. For over a decade, FinFET architectures powered global computing by utilizing vertical fins to control electron flow. But at the 3 nanometer scale, electrons leaked straight through the base, forcing the industry to transition to gate-all-around nanosheets. This new design completely wrapped the gate around the conducting channels to suppress leakage, pushing computing down to the 2 nanometer level. Advancing to 1 nanometer requires squeezing these atomic components even closer together, but if you push them too close, they electronically interfere with one another. Samsung committed to a radical architectural solution known as the forksheet field effect transistor. Forksheet technology inserts a microscopic 15 nanometer dielectric wall directly between adjacent transistors. Building a literal physical barrier reclaims dead space within the silicon lattice. It allows engineers to push the transistors closer together without triggering electrical interference, successfully circumventing the extreme manufacturing complexity of older, fully stacked designs. But shrinking transistors to the atomic level requires unprecedented manufacturing machinery. Circuit patterns must be etched onto silicon wafers using light with wavelengths vastly smaller than the visible spectrum. The entire global semiconductor industry relies entirely on a single Dutch company to do this, ASML. They are the sole producer of extreme ultraviolet, or EUV, lithography scanners. Standard EUV machines max out at a 13 nanometer resolution. Moving to the 1 nanometer generation requires a massive leap in optical engineering. ASML developed high-NA EUV scanners, utilizing upgraded optics to compress the EUV light tighter and achieve an unprecedented 8 nanometer printing resolution. High-NA EUV represents the most complex and expensive manufacturing equipment ever created by human beings. A single scanner costs $350 million and requires 3 Boeing 747s just to transport it. Samsung committed 1.1 trillion won to acquire 2 production-grade twin-scan EXE 5200B scanners. Delivery of the first unit is scheduled for late 2025. The second arrives in early 2026. The high-NA machines deploy directly to the 2 nanometer Foundry lines to manufacture the Exynos 2600 mobile processor and Tesla's AI 6 chips. Simultaneously, engineering teams will adapt the tooling for the upcoming 1 nanometer rollout. Competitors are moving aggressively to secure their own footing. Intel acts as the industry first mover, piloting high-NA machines in Oregon. TSMC is opting for calculated restraint, utilizing older low-NA machines to maximize immediate cost efficiency, while Japan's state-backed Rapidus aims to bypass older nodes entirely to hit 1.4 nanometer by 2029. Winning the international chip war requires more than advanced lithography tools and novel transistor designs. Manufacturing semiconductors at scale demands raw industrial infrastructure. It requires infinite electricity. It requires unlimited water. It requires vast tracts of hyper-developed land. To permanently secure its technological sovereignty, the South Korean government orchestrated the largest private industrial project in human history. State planners and corporate executives designed an astronomical blueprint. They moved to construct the world's most advanced semiconductor manufacturing base. Look at the map. Directly south of Seoul sits the Yongin Semiconductor Mega Cluster. It spans 21 million square meters, linking existing fabrication facilities with massive new construction zones. By 2047, the region will host 16 new fabrication plants. Total private investment reaches an astounding 622 trillion won, roughly $460 billion. The scale of production defies traditional industrial metrics. By 2030, the Yongin cluster targets a monthly output of 7.7 million silicon wafers, projecting millions of new jobs and hundreds of billions of dollars in economic ripple effects over the next 2 decades. In 2026 alone, Samsung Electronics set a historic corporate record by executing 110 trillion won in capital expenditures and research, but executing a project of this magnitude immediately strains national infrastructure. Fabricating cutting-edge logic and memory chips consumes staggering volumes of resources. The planned facilities require an estimated 15 gigawatts of electricity to operate at full capacity. Generating 15 gigawatts demands the equivalent baseline output of 15 full-scale nuclear reactors. South Korea faces a severe energy constraint. A heavily industrialized, export-driven economy situated on a geographically isolated peninsula leaves few options for rapid grid expansion. The national energy mix relies heavily on imported fossil fuels. Oil and coal comprise over half of the nation's primary energy consumption. The astronomical power requirements ignited fierce domestic political battles. Lawmakers and civic groups attempted to force the relocation of Samsung and SK Hynix facilities southward to utilize offshore wind and solar. Corporate leadership rejected the political pressure entirely. Relying on intermittent renewable energy presents unacceptable operational risks. A microsecond power failure destroys thousands of wafers instantly, resulting in millions of dollars in scrapped inventory. The government ultimately pushed forward with the Yongin site. They recognized that global competitiveness superseded regional development goals. The Ministry of Environment approved massive water diversion projects, planning to repurpose existing dams to supply 600,000 tons of industrial water daily to the complex. But the internal political frictions regarding regional grid expansion vanished in the face of a severe external macro shock. South Korea's export economy relies entirely on stable, globalized supply chains. In February 2026, the fundamental architecture of international trade broke. Tensions in the Middle East exploded into open conflict. A coordinated military campaign involving the United States and Israel targeted Iranian infrastructure on February 28, 2026. Iran retaliated with aggressive drone and missile strikes across the Persian Gulf. They immediately closed the Strait of Hormuz to maritime traffic. The closure stranded millions of barrels of crude oil, sending global equity markets into an immediate panic. But this broader energy crisis masked a far more lethal threat to the semiconductor industry. Iranian strikes heavily damaged Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city, the largest liquefied natural gas export facility on the planet. Modern semiconductor manufacturing requires an uninterrupted supply of specialized industrial gases. Helium serves as an irreplaceable component, cooling the incredibly sensitive optics inside the EUV scanners. Because it cannot be artificially synthesized, commercial helium is captured entirely as a waste byproduct of natural gas processing. Qatar produces roughly 33% of the global helium supply. The shutdown of the Ras Laffan complex severed a third of the world's helium output overnight. 5.2 million cubic meters of gas per month vanished from the market instantly. Spot prices for helium doubled within weeks, reaching $450 per 1,000 cubic feet. Qatar Energy declared force majeure on all standing contracts. Semiconductor fabrication plants lack the capacity for long-term on-site gas storage. Operating on just-in-time inventory models, global foundries suddenly faced critical shortages. The helium crisis exposed the profound fragility of the technological ecosystem. Wholly dependent on energy and raw materials imported through volatile waterways, South Korean manufacturers scrambled to secure alternative supplies. The crisis forced foundries to ration reserves, slowing down production cycles precisely when the industry attempted to ramp up advanced node manufacturing. The geopolitical constraints extended far beyond the Middle East. The United States actively weaponized its domestic market to isolate Chinese technological development by implementing the CHIPS and Science Act, a massive $79.3 billion industrial policy designed to lure semiconductor manufacturing back to American soil. Attached to the federal funding were strict national security guardrails. The legislation strictly embargoed advanced logic processors, placing severe restrictions on companies attempting to expand their operations within the People's Republic of China. Samsung and SK Hynix found themselves trapped between two superpowers. Both South Korean firms operated massive, highly profitable memory fabrication plants within China, leaving billions of dollars of infrastructure vulnerable to the crossfire. Historically, the US granted the Korean chipmakers broad waivers. This allowed them to import restricted American semiconductor manufacturing equipment into their Chinese facilities without interference. As 2026 began, Washington terminated the waiver system entirely. Moving to a strict annual licensing regime, the US government forced Samsung and SK Hynix to apply for yearly approvals to maintain their Chinese operations. This policy shift signaled a deliberate tightening of American oversight, ensuring that Korean advanced logic development remained tethered to US interests and permanently decoupled from Chinese infrastructure. South Korea's push to conquer the 1-nanometer frontier represents a total mobilization of national resources. The technological roadmap is locked. By 2030, Samsung will deploy the forksheet transistor architecture. They will utilize the 0.55 numerical aperture of ASML's $350 million high-end AEUV scanners. They will etch logic gates barely wider than a single strand of DNA. The financial blueprint is equally massive. Samsung executing over $110 trillion, in capital expenditures and R&D in a single year, demonstrates a willingness to bleed capital to reclaim market dominance. The $622 trillion Yongin mega-cluster ensures that the physical infrastructure required to produce 7.7 million wafers monthly will exist on sovereign soil. Yet, the success of the 1-nanometer endeavor relies entirely on variables outside the control of cleanroom engineers. Surpassing a 70% yield on the SF2P node and securing the $50 billion Tesla AI 6 contract proves that Samsung can still execute at the highest levels of commercial logic manufacturing. But external shocks routinely threaten the foundation of the enterprise. A blocked strait in the Middle East instantly cripples the supply of critical noble gases. Protectionist American legislation forces the continuous reconfiguration of global supply lines. Domestic political disputes over high-voltage transmission towers threaten the energy grid necessary to power the massive new fabrication plants. The race against TSMC, Intel, and Rapidus is no longer purely a contest of physics and electrical engineering. The victor will be the entity capable of navigating hostile geopolitical environments. They must secure vulnerable raw materials. They must leverage immense state-backed financial power to absorb the astronomical costs of atomic-scale manufacturing. South Korea committed the entirety of its industrial legacy to ensure it does not lose.